Well, it is the end of August, and for knitters everywhere, what that means is autumn is right around the corner. And when that door opens, we start to see the knitting community on social media and here on YouTube become abuzz with all the new projects and all the inspiring knits that they plan to complete for fall. And that is a beautiful thing. However, for many of us who are easily inspired to create, we may find ourselves caught in the crossroads of creativity and the slow-made movement in our knitting journey. And if you're finding it difficult to manage that pulsing creativity while also maintaining that intrinsic slowness of the craft, I'm here to provide you with some tips to help you strike that delicate balance. So if that sounds like just your cup of tea, get cozy and let's dive in. Hello, 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 and welcome to the Wool Needles Hands Midweek Ramble. My name is Taylor and I will be your host. I'm so happy to have you here because I want to share with you guys today a little PSA, if you will, to get you started on your fall knitting journey. Now, there's a lot going on in the knitting community on social media and here on YouTube and in the real world about fall and inspiring knits and all the things that we want to knit now that the weather is going to start cooling down. If, of course, you're in the Northern Hemisphere, everybody is a buzz with all things knitting right now in the knitting community, and that's very exciting, and I love fall for that reason as well. However, when that starts to happen, I think that we tend to feel this little bit of tension that starts to build and makes us feel overwhelmed by all the possibilities before we even get started in our fall knitting journey. And so what I want to do today is share with you some guidelines that I feel like I've developed over the years and with some experience to help keep me grounded and focused on controlling my otherwise voracious creative appetite for all the knitting. I'm hoping you can take something away from this and in the very least allow it to give voice to some of these ideas that I think if we keep them in the back of our minds, we will not be as overwhelmed moving into that fall season when we see all of these beautifully curated Instagram accounts and knitting podcasts and the like. We can keep our feet on the ground and know we can only do so much, and focusing on what we can do and what we can produce will allow us to appreciate those things even more. My first tip for you is to embrace intentional project selection. It's really easy for us to fall down the rabbit hole of what's new and what's trendy and what other people are knitting and what other people are enthusiastic about. However, we should stay true to the projects that speak to us on a personal level rather than being influenced by what other people are knitting, what the trends are, or any other external pressures. Choose projects that align with your skill level, with your interests, and the time you can comfortably invest in those projects. One quick thing that you can implement right now that I've found to be very helpful for me, and this is if you use Ravelry as a place to curate knitting patterns or collect all of your projects that you've worked on, is to make sure that your Ravelry queue consists of fewer projects. When I am actively using my Ravelry queue, I like to limit it to 5 or fewer projects. I feel like even 5 is a stretch, but by limiting it to a certain number of projects that is comfortable for me, I see a trajectory of where I want to go with my knitting projects, and I don't feel so overwhelmed by lots and lots of projects that I know I'm not going to be able to complete in a reasonable amount of time. I figure how many projects you have in your queue should reflect how many projects you are able to complete in a year at most, 6 months ideally. Now this is me, this is my preference, and you may be different, but being intentional about your Ravelry queue is a really great place to start. Set realistic goals for yourself and base those goals and timelines off of what you have been able to do in the past, not off of what other people are doing or what a test knit is expecting of you, but off of what you are historically able to manage based on your experience. If you have never managed to complete an entire sweater in 2 months, do not sign up for a test knit that has a 2-month knitting timeline, because chances are you're either not going to complete it in that timeline, or if you do manage to complete it, it's going to come with a lot of unnecessary rushing and frustration and headache, which in my opinion takes the joy out of the process. It is just as much about the journey as it is about the destination, so keep that in mind when it comes to setting realistic timeline goals for your projects. And with that, the sun is out to lunch and I am in a shadow. Now this one might seem a little out of left field, but I think that this is really fantastic advice. Embrace unfinished projects. Unfinished does not mean a failure. If you have not finished something and have moved on to something else, that unfinished project is absolutely not a failure. I think this is an opportunity to reflect on whether or not this is a project you do genuinely want to finish, and I'll talk more about that in just a moment. However, the fact that it is unfinished does not mean that you've done anything wrong or that you are neglecting that particular project. I like to refer to these projects as back burner projects. They're in timeout for right now as you explore other avenues to help bolster your creativity. And if that back burner project is really something you want to have in your wardrobe or in your hand knit collection, you will come back to it. These are opportunities for growth. Allow yourself to revisit a project after you've had time away from that project. All of this is going to help you enjoy the craft without feeling any unnecessary guilt. If there is any place in your life where you do not need to lay unnecessary guilt on your shoulders, it is in your crafting. So definitely do not put yourself through that. Embrace your unfinished projects. They are a part of you, they are a part of your repertoire, and they are very, very important. Rotate your projects mindfully. This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, as I have several larger projects on the needles right now. When I say several, I say four larger projects on the needle right now that I am kind of actively interested in. I have one particular project, which is a raglan t-shirt that happens to be knit with a really lovely merino cotton yarn that is jet black. It is not the most visually interesting to work on as the stitches are all black. And so I find that it's taking me some time to work on this. But I've been thinking more about how I can bundle my projects with different events or activities that I happen to be participating in. Let me explain. The black t-shirt that I'm knitting, I have bundled with hockey practice for my boys. Whenever we are at the arena, which is about 3 to 4 times a week, I have my black t-shirt with me, and that is when I work on that project only. Because it's all stockinette, I can knit on it without looking at it, so I can watch what my boys are doing. It keeps my hands busy and it keeps things interesting for me, but I'm also able to attend to my boys at hockey practice. So that is the only time I work on this project. I know that when we're going to the arena, I grab my project bag with my black t-shirt, and that's when I work on that project. It doesn't bother me when I'm at home and I'm not working on it, because I know I'll be dedicating that time when we're at the hockey arena. When I'm knitting on my socks, that tends to be something I grab and take in the car with us. If we're driving around town and running errands, I'll work on my socks in the car because it's an easy grab and go project. If I happen not to work on it at home when I'm sitting on the sofa with my husband, I don't feel so bad about it because I know that I'm bundling that with car rides. I feel like if you have a way of rotating your projects and bundling them up with particular activities or events that you do, another one that I do is picking up my kids at school, waiting to pick up my kids while I'm in the car. There's a project I have for that. By doing this, it kind of reminds you that it's okay. I will get to these projects when I do these various different things. And if at any point you feel inspired to work on something outside of that context, of course, that's fine too. But at least it allows you to have some organization and structure, and it provides you with that peace of mind that you will get to these projects when time allows and when you find yourself in one of those particular events or activities, and to mindfully rotate what it is that you're working on. Celebrate small achievements. I remember back in the early days of knitting on Instagram, I feel like when people were posting their projects, most of the time folks were posting about one project at a time, and they were sharing progress photos of that one project until it was finished. And now, things are a little bit different. People have lots of different projects going at a time. But when they posted a photo of a particular project to show progress, it was usually after a small milestone in that project. And I actually think that this is very much the same way as it is now. However, I feel like we tend to, depending on how long it takes us to reach those milestones, we tend to feel like we need to show something else because it's taking us a long time to reach a particular milestone or to show any kind of significant progress. And so we pull out another project, and then that becomes overwhelming. Now, whether or not you're sharing your knits on social media, as long as we focus on small achievements, it makes us feel like we're making more progress than maybe we actually are. Small little milestones that we can celebrate and say, hey, we made this milestone, we're moving on to a new section. In fact, on a sweater that I'm working on right now, this is called the sweater number 18 by My Favorite Things seamless knitwear. I am about 1 centimeter away from completing the neckline of this sweater. I picked up stitches. I am almost done completing the neckline, and that is going to be my small achievement when I have completed the 3 inches of ribbing I need to complete for the neckline. That's a small achievement. That would be an opportunity if I did want to share this on social media. I could snap a photo, pop it up on Instagram, look what I've accomplished, and I'm moving on. And then the next small achievement would be to fold the neckline over and connect it or tack it down to the other side of the sweater. And then I have a 100% complete rolled neckline. Small achievements, and pace your project out like that. You could even go so far as taking the knitting pattern and marking on the knitting pattern if you're doing like an actual physical copy, or even if you're using an app like Knit Companion, and marking on the pattern where you're going to have those small achievement celebrations. Perhaps it's once you finish the yoke, perhaps it's when you finish a sleeve or a cuff. It doesn't matter what it is. Give yourself these mile markers so that you can celebrate those small achievements as you work through your project. Even if you're setting your project down to work on something else and you come back to it, if you know there's an achievement, or you know that there's a mile marker coming up, you're going to want to work towards that mile marker. And in fact, I think the idea of actually putting a marking on your pattern to denote a mile marker or a small achievement is really a genius idea. That literally just occurred to me, and I think that that's fantastic. Having a visual marker is fun. It reminds me of when we would take road trips as a kid. My dad would always have me watch the mile markers along the highway, and he would teach me about how that would tell me how many miles out we were from the next major city, or however that works. And I always got a kick out of watching the next mile marker come. It made you think the mile was going by so quickly. Like before you know it, we've traveled a mile and there's the next mile marker. There's something about having that visual representation of completing something that is motivating. So something to think about. Small achievements. Celebrate those in your project, and before you know it, you've racked up a bunch of achievements and your project's almost finished. Balancing enthusiastic creativity and inspiration with that intrinsic slowness of knitting is really challenging. We see so much that we want to create and that we want to have, and we feel the yarn and the texture of the fabrics, and we see beautifully curated photos on social media and knitting podcasters that are sharing all of these knits and all of this inspiration. But it's really important for us to recognize that all of that we see that is inspiring and somewhat overwhelming is there for us as inspiration. It is not there for us as an expectation. And by recognizing that all of this is not what is expected of us, but rather just inspiration to keep us motivated to craft, is really important at keeping us grounded. And staying grounded within this craft is what's going to keep you doing this craft for years and years to come. Create what you can create comfortably. Provide yourself with healthy opportunities for growth as a maker. Never compare yourself to someone else. Don't cave to the pressure unless something really speaks to you. And always knit what you love. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me for today's ramble. I hope that you took something from this. If you did take value from this video or enjoyed yourself at any point, don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe and click that bell icon so you can be notified anytime I upload new content, which is every Wednesday and every Sunday, except for this Sunday. We are taking the family on a vacay somewhere. We're not exactly sure. It's going to be rather spontaneous. So there will not be a podcast this Sunday. So I will see you for next week's episode of the Midweek Ramble, which will be on Wednesday. And I'm trying to decide, it may end up being a podcast episode in place of a ramble. We shall see. Time will tell. But until I see you again, happy knitting, happy making, happy whatever it is that you're doing. Take care, be well, and I will see you soon. Bye.